Once upon a time...
This is Into the Woods, a musical that debuted in 1987, written and directed by Stephen Sondheim and James Lapine respectively. In the world of musical theatre, this is one of the most iconic shows, thanks both in turn to its accessibility to perform at regional and high school theatres, as well as a brilliant professionally shot recording of the original cast by PBS. The plot is very unique, with multiple fairy tales being woven together into one story. These include Little Red Riding Hood, Cinderella, Jack and the Beanstalk, Rapunzel, and the childless couple from the Danish tale Thumbelina. Now, by this point in Sondheim's career, he had written all of this, so he certainly knew how to write a good show. What did this result in? An explosive burst of creativity fueled by unbounded artistic realization extracted by a cast and crew of creators with no cap on their potential. Or, in other words, a very good show. Into the Woods was really successful. At the Tony Awards, which is the Academy Awards equivalent for New York's Broadway theatre, it won in 3 categories: Best Original Score, Best Book of a Musical, and Best Performance by a Leading Actress in a Musical, losing most other awards to a little show called Phantom of the Opera. In addition, Into the Woods scored a healthy 2-year run on Broadway, and its penmanship by the legendary Stephen Sondheim meant that the show would leave a mark in the industry. So with all this success, with all these iconic performances and pieces of music and iconography concocted by the show, it was only inevitable that a movie adaptation was to be made. By the late 80s, it was already a popular process to take a successful Broadway show and convert it into a film. In 2014, Disney released their adaptation of Into the Woods, titled Into the Woods. Now, there are ways to make a good musical adaptation, and ways not to make a good movie adaptation. And where does Disney's Into the Woods sit? On a whole different planet. Oh boy. Where do I even start with this movie? I have been completely baffled by this film ever since I first saw it. On every level, it is just a complete misread of the original. But why? I'm gonna run you through it. Oh, and quick warning, there will be lots of spoilers, so if you care about this sort of thing, basically just go watch the original. It is so much better. And of course, it goes without saying, but this is all my opinion. Casting for any movie, show, or anything in between is really important. For a show like Into the Woods, it is pretty much crucial. The show is at its core an ensemble piece, and while you could argue 1 or 2 characters have more to do than others, at the end of the day they all have a big key role to play in the tale. Let's do a quick rundown. There is the baker and his wife, a childless couple who wish to have a child, the evil witch from next door obsessed with her garden, Cinderella, a sweet girl who gets caught in between 2 extreme worlds, Jack, a dim-witted boy, and his mother who is a bit stern but understandably so when she has an idiot for a son, and then Little Red Riding Hood, who is an obnoxious and glutton-driven young girl. These actors all bring such a great portrayal out of their roles, really leaning into an almost parodic caricature of these characters, but filled with so much heart. Chip Zion is iconic in this role, and Joanna Gleason won the Tony for Best Actress because of this role. These two have a beautiful, intimate relationship that gets pushed and pulled through good and bad. The Witch, played by Bernadette Peters, is maybe one of the most iconic theatre performances of all time. For those unaware, Bernadette Peters is pretty much like the equivalent of Jesus. Apparently she only did this show as a favor and she left just this mammoth of a presence, like, whoa. Then there's all these other performances which are also beautifully drawn as they teeter on the line of being funny and over the top, but then also having these beautiful down-to-earth moments of heart. Basically, this cast is pretty much perfect, and the show relies on these actors bringing the lines and music to life through their performance and brilliant comic timing. In the film, celebrities. There is this god-awful trend in Hollywood where they cast musicals with big names to bring in more viewers. Yes, they achieve in their economic aiding lure, but 9 times out of 10, it lowers the overall quality of the product just to engage more viewers. To be an actor in the theatre, you have to sing for years and years and years to get a voice that can do stuff like this. Think of it like an athlete with the Olympics. Imagine you train for years and years to run the relay, and you train and train every day and go through ups and downs, and then finally you're there at the Olympics and it's amazing, but then overtaking you is James Corden, because everybody knows James Corden from the Late Late Show with James fucking Corden! This of course isn't to say that these actors are incapable of giving a good portrayal in this film. Most of these actors are good, great even. I mean, Anna Kendrick, Meryl Streep, Emily Blunt, Johnny Depp, James Corden. These actors do the best with what they have. have. I think a lot of the blame in this movie can be placed in directorial choices. This is such a colourful and enchanting musical, and yet Rob Marshall takes these characters and bases them in realism and forces them to adapt a naturalistic acting style, which of course just clashes so harsh with the material. Real quick drama lesson. When you're acting on stage, you have to act to the far back rows of the house so that they can understand what you're emoting, while on camera, you have to condense that to just your face, as your audience is less than a meter away. So how do you do the transition? You can either make the film aware of the fact that it's a musical and make its rules support that, or you can make it feel like it was never supposed to have songs in the first place. And that's what Into the Woods feels like. The music takes a back seat, but it's like one of those big cars that have two small seats at the back. That's where the music is chill dogging, you know? While in the original, the music is intertwined so heavily with the show that it has its hand on the steering wheel. When the characters sing, it never feels like an organic moment spurred from the inability to express their feelings through words. It just feels like, oh, is it time to do a song again? Oh, okay, cool. Into the Woods has some of the most beautifully written songs that are also very complex. That's what Sondheim does best, writing these absolutely meticulously complicated rhythms and melodies that are rooted so core into the emotional beat of each scene and character. But even the music in this film got a bit of the shaft. First off, the instrumentation. The original show had a pit orchestra of 15 players. For those unaware, the musicians are crammed packed into a tiny room underneath the stage called a pit, and they have to make the most wonderful music without being able to see anything upstairs. Despite this limitation, listen to how wonderfully big and bright the music sounds. Now in the film, with no limitation on size and with majority of the songs being pre-recorded, they had an orchestra of between 30 to 40 players. To accommodate the extra players and because it's a movie, they changed the instrumentation up to make it a bit more symphonic. Listen to that same part again. I don't know, in my opinion, it just feels more muddy and understated. I feel it's fair to say that the majority of the cast isn't vocally superb. There are a few standouts, but nothing mind-blowing. In fact, Rob Marshall looked for actors rather than singers in these roles. The intricacy of the performance was so important to him, ensuring his cast could carry a tune was almost secondary. And secondary it was. Becoming aware of us. Here what we have, of course, is the beautiful Hollywood auto-tune. I mean, it's fine, I guess, in solos, but artificial harmonies between two singers make me want to cut my ears off. Listen to these original harmonies done live. Mountains unscalable if it's conceivable, but unavailable. And then listen to these studio-created monstrosities. Holding to their own, thinking they're alone. Just give the actors singing lessons before shooting and make them practice. Because these guys aren't up to scrap, they also have to change the music by lowering the keys to make them not as high to sing. Additionally, the speed of songs are also slowed down. Is this a big deal? To me, yeah, kind of. It makes the songs drag and feel a lot less impressive, and at points can also ruin the tone established. Take the example Your Fault. Listen to the insanely fast way these characters defend themselves. Of course, these are all subjective things that just personally bother me a tiny bit, but what I won't excuse is the blatant demystifying of the original show. I've said it before, it's bright and enchanting, but also quirky and fun, and so many of the decisions in this translation go against that idea. I mentioned the groundedness and realism, but also the colour palette is very dull and uninspired, and the actors dull down a lot of their performances to be serious. The biggest culprit is with Jack and his mother. The whole joke in the original is that Jack is kind of stupid, and although he is a kid, he is obviously a big kid, like late teens, early adult. Mother, I'm a man now. You're still a little boy in your mother's eyes. He thinks his cow that milks is a he, his only friends are his pets, and he has no grasp on the seriousness of the world. Jack's mother is audibly frustrated with him, but in a way that is only understandable. She just wants to survive with the little money she has so that the two of them can live. In the movie, however, instead of doing the joke of a big idiot kid, they hired an actual kid. Okay, this might work. And then, instead of having Jack's mother being loving but constantly having to console Jack, she's just a bitch. I wish my son were not a fool. The serious edginess of Jack's mother in this serious grounded world mixed in with him being a child just vilifies her. Instead of thinking, oh, I get it, you think, oh my god, this woman is so awful and rude. This stabs the film later in the back when Jack's mother is killed. We no longer care. It honestly kind of just makes you feel like, oh, good riddance. And before she dies, when she defensively pleads with the giant, it doesn't feel earned. But in the original, she stands up to the giant as she has stood up to every character in the show, and it feels sweet, and then she dies, and it really is like, oh my god. But again, there's another difference. In the stage show, she is murdered in plain sight by the prince's steward, who is selfish and wants to protect himself from the giant. In the movie, she's pushed over into a log or something and then dies, lol. And that's another problem. People were very worried that with Disney making this film, it would be all Disney-fied and it would lose a lot of the darkness in the original. Because while the original show is definitely quirky and fun, it does have sexual undertones. Why does the wolf have a dick? And the second act is completely dark and scary to completely contradict the first act. In fact, a lot of schools do just a production of the first act because it ends happily ever after. While to be fair, the movie isn't actually cleaned up that much, the few bits of censoring you see are just odd, like Jack's mother's death, as well as the baker's wife's death. In the original, she is squished by the giant, but here she just awkwardly walks to a cliff and then falls off like, what? Also in the original, both the princes cheat on their wives, while in the film only Cinderella's prince does. In fact, in the movie they give Rapunzel and her prince a happy ending, which she does not have in the original. In the OG, she bears twins and then is left by the prince because she is too emotional, and then she loses the twins and then is killed by the giant. Yikes. Another big change is the alteration of this beautiful conversation about what is right and wrong halfway through the song No One Is Alone.
That steward will pay for this. After we slay the giant, I will slay him.
You'll do nothing of the kind.
He shouldn't have killed my mother, right?
No, I guess not.
Then he must die.
No.
Why not?
That would be wrong.
What he did was wrong and he should be punished.
He will be somehow.
How?
I don't know. Stop asking me questions I can't answer.
I'm going to kill him.
Then kill him. No. No, don't kill him.
It's complicated, life is complicated, no one knows the answer, and after a moment of struggle, the baker consoles Jack. In the movie,
the steward will pay for this.
No, Jack.
After we slay the giant, I will slay him.
You'll do nothing of the kind.
What he did was wrong. He should be punished.
It's not as easy as that.
the subtlety and complication gone. Is this a big deal though? I guess not. It just seems so strange and honestly inorganic. The second act of the show is about community responsibility and being selfless over selfish, and that doesn't really come through with the film, as the characters acting greedily aren't punished, or they are just off screen. It's just weird that Disney, of all companies, took this movie, censored it with a band-aid, but then didn't lean into the wackiness of it all. Why is it so serious and drab on the surface, but then childish and light inside? That's like the opposite of the original. You know what? At times the movie can be fun. Like when Little Red Riding Hood is eaten by the wolf, it becomes fantastical and I really like it. Same with when the witch dies, I like that too. But why are you trying to be so serious? Why make a real CGI ugly giant? Why make a CGI cow that's so boringly comes to life? Why is Cinderella's dress reveal so boring? Why is the beanstalk so boring? Why is everything so unfantastical? Can I let you guys in on a little secret? And don't tell anyone I told you this, but Into the Woods is super funny. I mean, like, really hilarious. The audience doesn't stop laughing. It almost feels like a sitcom.
She's dead.
We thought you would prefer a live one.
Of course I prefer a live one, so bring me the dead one and I'll bring her back to life.
You could do that.
No! These beans carry magic.
What kind of magic?
Tell him.
A giant.
Maybe we should tell someone.
Who are you going to tell?
The audience doesn't stop laughing. It almost feels like a sitcom. The movie loses a lot of humor by not leaning into the zaniness of the material. It just isn't as funny. Of course, some jokes do land and translate well.
These beans, they carry magic. What kind of magic? Tell him.
But the added humor just made me cringe.
No, bad idea.
Are you all right?
While the idea of the original show is to take these fairy tales and to weave them in and out of one another, they are also a parody of the conventions and tropes of fairy tales mixed in with a bit of adult humor.
Because the baker had lost his father and his mother in a baking accident. Well, at least that's what he believed. Mother! Son, all is repaired.
You're probably wondering who those last two characters were. That was the narrator of the show and the mysterious man, who turns out to be the baker's father who ran away.
Father! How could that be you? I thought you died in a baking accident.
Where are these two characters in the movie? cut. One of the main themes of the show is parenting, raising a child, and family. And the big moral dilemma for the baker is that his life is cursed by his father's mistake, and he tries to fix it while not relapsing into those same mistakes. In my opinion, the crutch of the show, the denouement if you will, is the song titled No More. After running away from the group and giving up, the baker runs into his father, who tells him that he's just repeating onto his son what he did to him, and you get this beautiful moment where the baker grows and learns that you have to take responsibility and take charge, and running away leaves nothing but a never-ending cycle of despair.
No more.
This is maybe the most important part of the whole show. Now you might be wondering, well, if the mysterious man isn't in the movie, how do they serve this important piece of the show? Well,
Son.
They don't. Well, James Corden sits there and cries. They had the audacity to play the instrumental for No More as underscore, just waving a carrot in front of the ears of people who knew the song, going, ha ha ha, it's here but it isn't. You thought we would do the song. This is the perfect moment for a song. James Corden is so overcome with emotion, and this would be the perfect time to express his feelings through music. And his crying doesn't even resolve the botched dilemma they try to add in the film, with James occasionally going, oh, I can't be a father. And the removal of the mysterious man and the narrator removes two of my favorite jokes from the show.
It's interesting to examine the moral issue involved here. Now, the finality of stories such as these dictates... What? No.
Come on, they feed the narrator to the giant. That just makes it so meta.
There must always be an outside observer to pass the story along.
Some of us don't like the way you've been telling it.
Oh, but of course, we've got to fit the 2-hour time frame. It is normal that for any translation of any medium to another that things will be cut and changed. You can't put a triangle block into a circle hole. I tried. But Into the Woods cuts too much. Here's a little recap of what ended on the cutting room floor.
I guess this is goodbye, old.
It's what's important really is the
What midnight?
Till midnight.
Ever after.
we're so happy you're so
A bear bears us.
Into the woods, it's always no more.
Of course, some of these cuts make sense. The first and second midnight were very comical, and a good tension breaker in the play would definitely have slowed down the pace of the film and not made much sense. The agony reprise as well is fine to be cut in my opinion, because although it's funny and adds in the element that both the princes are awful and unloyal, it always seemed to freeze the second act for me. For the rest of these, come on, these are all lovely pieces that are driven so beautifully by the characters and their interactions with others and the scenario they find themselves in. They're so important to the story, especially the reprise of the prologue. It rhymes with the first but with a darker undertone, reflecting the light and shade signs of the coin that is the happy and fairy tale Act 1 and the darker and consequence-filled Act 2 of the original show. The second act of the movie is just so desperate to be over, it's practically screaming at the audience to kill me! Do it! Kill me! One of the best songs in the show, maybe one of Sondheim's best pieces ever, is the beautiful quartet No One Is Alone. Rob Marshall heard Barack Obama quote the song during a speech at the 10th anniversary of 9/11, and that was part of what convinced him to do the film. He then cut half the song out. You can't make this up. Okay, yes, I've been shitting on this film, but before I wrap things up, is there anything I do enjoy? Yeah, quite a few things actually. Like I mentioned earlier, I love when the film slightly dips into the world of being fantastical, such as Little Red Riding Hood being eaten, or the magic of the witch when it isn't smeared in terrible CGI, and I love the entire song Steps to the Palace. Time slows down as Cinderella makes her decision on what to do, it's just brilliant. While I'm hit or miss with the performances, I think I love Meryl Streep the most. She takes the character in a completely different direction than it has ever been, and I really like it. The chemistry between her and Rapunzel is actually really amazing. I think it's even stronger than it was in the original, and the song Stay With Me is absolutely gorgeous, easily the best performed one in the film. Well, at first I was iffy. I think the inclusion of lines and lyrics that explain why they have a 3-day deadline and why the witch can't touch the ingredients is helpful, because it never really seemed that clear in the original. But overall, this translation just doesn't work for me. Despite being limited to a small stage and having all the actors crammed on at once, once, the original production feels infinitely larger, more magical, and more inspired than the film, which just feels like a hollowed shell imitation of the show I love so much. Am I being biased? Of course, I've seen this show a million times, I know it back to front, I love it so much. It just pains me to see this movie take the show and just completely not understand it and just make this amalgamation and go boom, here we go.
I actually called Steve Sondheim and James Lapine the day after it opened on Christmas Day, and was able to say to each of them that in that one day, more people saw the film Into the Woods than experienced it in its 2 Broadway runs combined. So
a lot of people who have only seen the film think it's average, stating how putting 10 different storylines together of course won't result in a good film, or not being clear of what the theme is. So if you're not making it for the people who haven't seen the original, and you're not making it to uphold the spirit of people who love the original, who is this for? Is Into the Woods a bad movie? No. Is it a bad adaptation of one of the best musical theatre shows ever? Yeah, I think so. Hey guys, thank you for watching something a little bit different. I know I've jumped around between movies and games and now theatre, but I hope you enjoyed it. I will continue to bounce around between the 3 mediums because they are 3 things I really am passionate about. Anyways, tell me what you think. Have you seen the movie or the original? Am I right or wrong? And as always, let me know in the comments below where I went wrong and how I as always exude big virgin energy. Stay snug. See ya.